Emily Parker stood before the massive mirror in the dressing room of her luxurious mansion. Her fingers gently glided over the soft fabric of the designer dress that perfectly hugged her figure. Looking at her reflection, she couldn't help but think about how much her life had changed in the past few years. The dress cost a fortune, but now it didn't matter. Emily could afford any outfit, any luxury. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the confidence she now radiated, the inner light that seemed to emanate from her very soul. The dressing room door quietly opened, and James entered the room. His eyes lit up as soon as he saw Emily. He approached her from behind, wrapped his arms around her waist, and gently kissed her neck. "You are beautiful, my love," he whispered. "The most beautiful woman in the world." Emily smiled, looking at their reflection in the mirror. James, a successful businessman and millionaire, gazed at her with such adoration that it took her breath away. Who would have thought her life would turn out like this? Closing her eyes, Emily plunged into memories. She remembered how it all began, how she had come to this moment in her life. Emily Green had always been a bright star. At 18, she entered a prestigious university, full of hopes and ambitions. Her golden hair, like sunbeams, framed her face with clear blue eyes, reflecting her kind soul. Emily's beauty was not only external. Her kindness and responsiveness attracted people to her like a magnet. She always found time to listen to her classmates' problems, help with studies, or simply offer a kind word of support. Despite her attractiveness, Emily never used it to achieve her goals. She firmly believed that everything should be earned through hard work and talent. In her first year, Emily chose the major marketing and communications. She immersed herself in her studies, spending long hours in the library, participating in student projects, and attending extra lectures. Her thirst for knowledge and persistence didn't go unnoticed. Professors often used her as an example for other students. It was during one of the group projects that Emily met Michael Parker. He was studying finance and was a year ahead of her. Tall, with dark hair and brown eyes, Michael immediately caught Emily's attention with his confidence and ambition. Their first meeting happened in the university cafeteria. Emily was sitting at a table surrounded by books and notes, preparing for a project presentation. Michael approached her with a cup of coffee in his hands. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" he asked, pointing to the chair across from Emily. She looked up from her notes and smiled. "Yes, of course." Michael sat down and introduced himself. Noticing what Emily was working on, he offered his help. It turned out he had experience with similar projects. "I would gladly accept your help," Emily replied, "but I think it would be unfair to the other students." Michael was impressed by her principles. "You know, you're right. But maybe I could just look at your presentation and give you a few tips? Just from a material presentation perspective." Emily agreed, and they spent the next hour discussing her project. Michael was smart and charismatic, and Emily found herself enjoying his company. From that day on, Michael and Emily began to cross paths more often at the university. They had lunch together, discussed studies, and their plans for the future. Gradually, their friendship grew into something more. In Emily's second year, Michael invited her on a date. He chose a cozy Italian restaurant not far from campus. Emily wore her favorite blue dress, which highlighted the color of her eyes. Over dinner, they talked about their dreams and ambitions. Michael shared his desire to become a successful financier, maybe even start his own company. Emily talked about her passion for marketing and her dream of working for a large international corporation. "You know," Michael said, looking into her eyes, "I think we could make a great team. You with your creative thinking and me with my financial skills." Emily smiled. "Sounds tempting. But let's finish university first." Their relationship developed rapidly. They were young, in love, and full of hopes for the future. Michael admired not only Emily's beauty but also her intelligence and determination. Emily saw in Michael a reliable partner with whom she could build a successful future. After graduating from university, Michael proposed to Emily. It happened during their trip to the coast. They were walking along the beach at sunset when Michael suddenly got down on one knee and took a small velvet box out of his pocket. "Emily," he said, opening the box and revealing a beautiful diamond ring, "will you marry me?" Emily was so happy that it took her breath away. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, of course." Their wedding was small but beautiful. They invited only their closest friends and family. Emily glowed in her white dress, and Michael couldn't take his eyes off her. After the wedding, the newlyweds moved into a small apartment in the city center. Both began their careers. Michael took a job at a financial firm, and Emily got a position as a junior marketer at an advertising agency. The first years of their marriage were filled with love and mutual support. They both worked hard, striving to build successful careers. In the evenings, they shared their successes and failures, supporting each other in difficult moments. Emily quickly moved up the career ladder. Her creativity and hard work did not go unnoticed, and soon she became a leading specialist in her department. Michael was also making progress in the financial field, gradually gaining experience and connections. They often had romantic dinners at home or went out to restaurants on weekends. Michael loved surprising Emily with small gifts, flowers, her favorite chocolate, or theater tickets. Emily felt happy and full of life. She loved her job, her husband, their life together. It seemed like everything was turning out just as she had dreamed. But fate decided to make its own adjustments to their perfect life. It all started when Emily began feeling extreme fatigue and pain in her legs after a long workday. At first, she attributed it to stress and the high heels she often wore to work. However, over time, the pain intensified to the point where Emily could barely walk. After weeks of persuasion from Michael, she finally agreed to see a doctor. The diagnosis was unexpected. Emily was diagnosed with a rare bone disease that caused severe pain and limited mobility. The doctors recommended a long course of treatment and a significant reduction in physical activity. Emily was in shock. She had always been active, loved dancing, running in the mornings. Now she had to spend most of her time at home, limiting her movements. At first, Michael was very supportive. He helped Emily with household chores, drove her to treatments, and tried to cheer her up when she felt especially down. But the forced reduction in activity and constant pain began to affect Emily's figure. She started gaining weight. At first, the changes were barely noticeable, but gradually they became more apparent. Emily tried to control her weight with a diet, but her limited mobility and constant stress from the illness negated all her efforts. She felt her body changing, and this caused her great discomfort and insecurity. Michael, it seemed, also noticed these changes. His compliments became less frequent, and his looks less admiring. One day, as Emily was trying on a dress for an important corporate event, she noticed Michael frowning as he looked at her. "Maybe you should choose something else," he suggested. "This dress is a bit tight." Emily felt tears welling up in her eyes. She knew she had gained weight, but hearing it from her husband hurt especially deeply. "I'm trying, Michael," she said quietly. "You know it's hard for me to move and—" I know, Michael interrupted her. "But maybe you should watch what you eat a bit more." These words cut Emily deeply. She felt like Michael didn't understand what she was going through. She needed his support, not criticism. From that day on, things started changing between Emily and Michael. Michael began spending more time at work, often staying late. When he was home, there was tension between them. They spoke less, shared their thoughts and feelings less frequently. Emily felt the gap between them growing wider with each passing day. She tried to talk to Michael, to explain how she felt, but he didn't seem to want to listen. He always found an excuse to avoid a serious conversation. At the same time, Emily was facing new challenges at work. Despite still performing her duties well, she felt that her appearance was affecting how her colleagues treated her. Some looked at her with pity, while others seemed to take her less seriously. One day, Emily accidentally overheard two of her co-workers talking about her in the cafeteria. "Have you seen Emily? She's changed so much lately," one said. "Yeah, poor thing," replied the other. "I wonder how her husband feels about it." Emily felt a lump in her throat. She quickly turned and left the cafeteria, not wanting her colleagues to notice her presence. This incident further eroded her confidence. At home, the situation continued to deteriorate. Michael increasingly criticized Emily for her appearance and her lack of effort to lose weight. He didn't understand that his words only made things worse, causing Emily more stress, which led to further weight gain. "Emily, couldn't you at least try to get in shape?" Michael said one evening as they were preparing for a dinner with his colleagues. "You know how important it is to make a good impression in my field." Emily felt something break inside her. "You think I'm not trying? You think I like being this way?" Her voice trembled with hurt and anger. "I fight pain every day, Michael. I'm trying to manage work, the house, this damn illness. And you, all you do is criticize me." Michael looked surprised by her outburst. "I just want to help you, Emily. I want you to be healthy and happy." "No, Michael," Emily shook her head. "You want me to look the way that's convenient for you. You're not even trying to understand what I'm going through." After that conversation, the tension between them only intensified. Michael spent even more time at work, and when he was home, they barely spoke. Emily felt increasingly lonely and depressed. She tried to focus on her work, but even there it was difficult. Her illness limited her abilities, and her changed appearance seemed to affect how her colleagues treated her. One day, after an especially tough day at work, Emily came home and found Michael packing a suitcase. "What's going on?" she asked, feeling her heart race. Michael turned to her, his face tense. "Emily, I think we need to live apart for a while." Emily felt the ground fall out from beneath her. "What? Why? I can't do this anymore," Michael sighed. "You've changed, Emily. You're not the woman I married anymore. I've tried, really, but I just can't." Emily couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You're leaving me? Because I got sick? Because I gained weight?" Her voice shook with anger and pain. "It's not just that," Michael tried to explain. "We've grown apart. You're constantly angry, always blaming me. I feel like nothing I do is enough." "Not enough," Emily cried. "You didn't even try to really support me. All you did was criticize and judge." But Michael seemed to have already made up his mind. He closed the suitcase and headed for the door. "I'm sorry, Emily. I'll contact you later to discuss the details." And with that, he left, leaving Emily alone in what was once their happy home. Emily collapsed onto the couch, feeling tears streaming down her cheeks. She couldn't believe this was really happening. How could the man who swore to love her in sickness and in health just leave when she needed him the most? The following weeks passed in a haze. Emily felt empty and broken. She struggled to make herself go to work every day, where she tried to maintain her professionalism despite the storm of emotions inside her. Her colleagues noticed the changes in her behavior, but most didn't know how to approach the situation. Only Sophie, her longtime friend from the design department, dared to directly ask what had happened. "Emily, I can see that you're hurting," Sophie said one day during lunch break. "You can talk to me if you want." Emily hesitated for a moment, but then, to her own surprise, she found herself telling Sophie everything, about the illness, the weight gain, and how Michael left. Sophie listened without interrupting and then hugged Emily tightly. "You're strong, Em. You'll get through this. And I'll be here to help you." Sophie's support became a ray of light in Emily's darkness. She began to realize that maybe Michael's departure wasn't the end of the world. Maybe it was a chance to start over, to rediscover herself. From that moment, Emily decided to focus on herself. She started seeing a therapist to deal with the emotional fallout of the divorce and her illness. She also consulted a nutritionist to develop a diet plan that would help her feel better without setting unrealistic weight loss goals. At work, Emily threw herself into a new major project. She worked harder than ever, determined to prove to herself and others that her worth wasn't tied to her appearance. It was during this project that Emily really started to notice James Harrington, the CEO of the company. Of course, she knew who he was. He was Michael's boss and often attended corporate events. But now, as she presented her ideas at an executive meeting, she noticed how attentively he was listening to her. After the presentation, James approached her. "Great work, Miss Parker," he said with a smile. "Your ideas are really impressive." Emily felt her cheeks flush slightly at the compliment. "Thank you, Mr. Harrington. I'm glad you liked it." "Please, call me James," he replied. "I'd love to discuss some of the details of your project. Maybe over lunch next week." Emily was surprised by the invitation but agreed. Lunch with James Harrington turned out to be unexpectedly pleasant for Emily. They did discuss her project, but the conversation flowed easily and naturally. James asked insightful questions, showing a deep understanding of marketing strategies. "Your approach is very creative, Emily," James remarked as they discussed the key points of the campaign. How did you come up with the idea to use interactive elements in outdoor advertising? Emily smiled, feeling a surge of confidence. I've noticed that people spend more and more time with their gadgets, even outdoors. I thought if we could engage them interactively with our ads, it would significantly increase brand recall. James nodded, clearly impressed. That's very observant. Are you always this attentive to detail? I try to be, Emily replied. I believe the most interesting opportunities often lie in the small details. After that meeting, Emily noticed that James started appearing more often at her department's meetings. He always listened carefully to her suggestions and often asked her to stay after the meetings to discuss some ideas in more detail. During one of those discussions, James suddenly asked, Emily, have you ever thought about leading your own project? Emily was surprised. Honestly, not really. I've always been a part of the team. I think you have the potential for more, James said. How would you feel about taking charge of a new marketing initiative for our environmental division? Emily felt her heart race with excitement. That would be amazing, James. But are you sure I'm ready? James smiled. Absolutely. I've seen your work, Emily. You're talented, creative, and hardworking. That's exactly the kind of person we need for this project. From that moment, Emily dove headfirst into the new project. She worked harder than ever but felt energized and inspired. James regularly checked in on her progress, always making time to discuss any issues that arose. During one of these meetings, when they stayed late discussing strategy, James suddenly said, You know, Emily, I admire your dedication to work. But don't forget to take breaks sometimes. Balance is important. Emily sighed. You're right. It's just, work helps me take my mind off personal problems. James looked at her thoughtfully. I don't want to intrude, but if you ever need to talk, I'm always here to listen. Emily hesitated for a moment, but then decided to open up. She told James about her divorce, her health issues, and how all of it had affected her confidence. James listened attentively, without interrupting. When Emily finished, he gently said, Emily, you're an incredibly strong person. What you've been through would have broken many people. But not only did you get through it, you continue to grow and evolve. That's truly admirable. His words deeply touched Emily. For the first time in a long time, she felt understood and valued for who she was. From that moment, their relationship became more personal, though it remained professional. They often discussed not just work but also books, movies, and their views on life. Emily found James to be a deep and insightful conversationalist, someone she enjoyed talking to. One day, as they were discussing a new psychology book, James shared, You know, Emily, I also went through a divorce a few years ago. It was tough, but the experience taught me a lot. Emily was surprised. Really? I had no idea. How did you deal with it? James gazed out the window thoughtfully. It wasn't easy, but I realized I needed to focus on personal growth, on becoming the best version of myself. Not for anyone else, but for me. Those words made Emily reflect. She realized that lately, she had indeed been feeling better, more confident. And it wasn't so much about external changes as it was about internal growth. Emily's project was progressing successfully. Her innovative ideas were attracting attention not only within the company but in the industry as a whole. She started receiving invitations to speak at conferences and give interviews for industry publications. James always supported her in these endeavors. You deserve recognition, Emily, he would say. Your talent and hard work should be acknowledged. One day, after a successful product presentation, when they were celebrating their success at a small restaurant near the office, Emily suddenly realized how much her life had changed over the past year. You know, James, she said, raising her glass, I want to thank you. Your belief in me, your support. It means more to me than you can imagine. James smiled, his eyes warm with kindness. Emily, you've earned all of this yourself. I'm just glad I could help you see your potential. At that moment, Emily felt that something had changed between them. It was a barely perceptible feeling, but it made her heart beat a little faster. She realized that her feelings for James had grown deeper than just respect for a boss or gratitude for his support. But she also knew she wasn't ready to act on those feelings. She was still healing from past wounds, still learning to love herself. And her work was too important to her to risk. So, Emily decided to focus on her project and her personal growth. But she couldn't deny that James's presence in her life, his support and understanding, made the journey much easier and more enjoyable. Despite Emily's concerns, her fears slowly began to fade. Their meetings became more frequent. James started bringing Emily coffee in the mornings, knowing her favorite kind and how she liked it prepared. "Thought you might need this after a long night working on the project," he would say with a warm smile. Emily, in turn, noticed that she began paying more attention to her appearance before meetings with James. She caught herself spending a bit more time choosing an outfit, hoping to make an impression. Their conversations often went beyond work topics. James shared stories about his childhood in a small town, how he always dreamed of the big city and a big business. Emily shared her feelings about her divorce and how she was learning to love herself again. One day, after an especially successful presentation, James invited Emily to dinner at an upscale restaurant. "To celebrate your success," he said, but in his eyes, Emily saw something more than just professional respect. At dinner, James gave Emily a small gift, a delicate silver bracelet. "I saw it in a store window and thought of you," he said, slightly embarrassed. "It's as elegant and refined as you are." Emily was touched by the gesture. She put on the bracelet, feeling her heart race a little faster as James helped her fasten the clasp. Such moments became more frequent. James would give Emily small but thoughtful gifts, a book they had discussed, a rare type of tea she had once mentioned wanting to try. Each gift showed how attentively he listened to her, how well he knew her. Emily felt her feelings for James growing deeper. She caught herself eagerly anticipating their meetings, smiling whenever she saw his name in her inbox. But along with these feelings, her anxiety grew. What did all of this mean? Did James truly feel the same, or was she just misinterpreting his friendliness? Finally, after months of uncertainty, Emily decided it was time to clarify things. After another late night working together on the project, when they were alone in the office, she gathered her courage and asked, "James, I need to ask, what's going on between us? I feel like our relationship has changed, become more personal. Am I wrong?" James looked at her for a long moment, then took a deep breath. "Emily, there's something I need to tell you. I knew you long before you started working at this company." Emily looked at him in surprise. "What do you mean?" "We went to the same university," James continued. "You probably don't remember me. I looked very different back then. I was a bit chubby, wore glasses. But I remember you very well. You even helped me once with a marketing project." Emily was stunned. She tried to remember, straining her memory, but the image of a young James slipped away from her. I was in love with you then," James confessed, his voice softening. "But you were with Michael, and you seemed so happy. I decided it was best to forget about my feelings and move on." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "When I saw you again, here at the company, I couldn't believe my eyes. You had changed, yes, but in my eyes, you were still the same Emily, smart, kind, full of life. And I realized my feelings hadn't gone away." Emily listened, holding her breath. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "But I saw that you were going through a tough time," James continued. "I didn't want to complicate your life. So, I decided just to be there for you, to support you as a friend and colleague. But the more time we spent together, the harder it became to hide my feelings." He looked directly into her eyes. "Emily, you're an incredible woman. You've been through so much, but you've remained strong, kind, and talented. I admire you now even more than before, and my feelings for you have only grown." Emily felt her heart race. She didn't know what to say. All these months, she had thought her feelings were one-sided, that she was just misinterpreting James's friendliness. And now, "James, I don't know what to say," she finally said. "This is so unexpected. I feel the same way, but I was afraid to admit it, even to myself. After everything that happened with Michael, I was sure I could never trust anyone that completely again." James took her hand in his. "Emily, I understand. And I'm not rushing you. I just want you to know, I'm here, by your side. And no matter how much you've changed physically over the years, to me, you're still the same Emily I fell in love with in college. Only now, you're even stronger, even wiser. And I love you even more." Emily felt tears welling up in her eyes. She hadn't expected such a confession, such depth of feeling. And for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to open her heart again. "James," she whispered, squeezing his hand, "I don't know what the future holds for us, but I know I want to find out with you." They looked at each other, and in that moment, both understood that this was the beginning of something new, something beautiful. The beginning of a new chapter in their lives, one they would write together. After that heartfelt conversation, Emily and James's relationship entered a new phase. They decided to take things slowly, savoring every moment of their blossoming romance. James was gentle and attentive, always ready to support Emily in everything, especially in her battle with her illness. Learning more about Emily's condition, James immediately took action. He used his connections and resources to find the best specialists in the field of rare bone diseases. "Emily," he said one evening as they were dining in a cozy restaurant, "I found a doctor who specializes in your condition. He works at a clinic in Switzerland and has impressive treatment results. I've arranged a consultation for next week." Emily was touched by his care. "James, this means so much to me, but I can't afford treatment abroad." James gently took her hand. "Don't worry about that. I want to help you. Let me do this." After some hesitation, Emily agreed. They traveled to Switzerland together, and James was by her side every step of the way, from consultations to developing a treatment plan. The new approach, suggested by the Swiss specialist, involved a combination of innovative medication therapy and a specially designed exercise program. James was always there, supporting Emily at every stage. They started swimming together, as it was one of the recommended activities. At first, Emily was self-conscious about her body, but James always found the right words to make her feel beautiful and desired. "You're beautiful, Emily," he'd say, gently kissing her after another swim. "And you're becoming even more beautiful with each passing day." Gradually, Emily began to notice changes. The pain became less intense, her mobility improved. Every week, she could swim further, and soon she and James started taking long walks through the picturesque city parks. "Remember how we started?" James asked one day as they returned from a 2-hour walk. "You could barely walk a block without resting. And now look at you." Emily smiled, feeling a surge of pride and gratitude. "It's all thanks to you, James. Your support gives me the strength to keep moving forward." As Emily's physical condition improved, she began to notice changes in her appearance as well. Regular exercise and a healthy diet, which she and James strictly adhered to, started to pay off. Her figure gradually returned to its former shape, her skin took on a healthy glow, and the sparkle in her eyes came back. James never stopped admiring her. "You've always been beautiful to me, Emily," he'd say, gently hugging her. "But now you're simply glowing. You're blossoming before my eyes." Emily felt her confidence growing. She started wearing more form-fitting clothes, no longer feeling ashamed of her body. At work, her colleagues couldn't help but notice the changes. "Emily, you look amazing," exclaimed Sophie, her friend from the design department. "What kind of magic has happened to you?" Emily just smiled mysteriously in response. She wasn't in a hurry to talk about her relationship with James, enjoying their personal, almost secret happiness. Their relationship developed slowly but steadily. They spent more and more time together outside of work. James introduced Emily to his friends, and she introduced him to her parents. Every day, they got to know each other better, discovering new facets of their personalities. James turned out to be not only a caring partner but also a great listener. He always made time to listen to Emily, support her during tough times, and share in her joys and sorrows. "You know, James," Emily said one day as they sat on the balcony of her apartment, watching the sunset, "I never thought I could be this happy again. You didn't just help me recover physically. You healed my heart." James gently kissed her. "Emily, you have no idea how much happiness you've brought into my life. You inspire me every day with your strength, your beauty, your intellect. I'm grateful for every moment spent with you." With each passing day, Emily became more confident, more irresistible. Her natural beauty, enhanced by the inner glow of happiness and love, attracted attention. But for Emily, only one gaze mattered, the gaze of James, full of love and admiration. They continued working together, but now their professional relationship was filled with a new level of understanding and support. Emily thrived in her role, and her projects became increasingly successful. James was proud of her achievements and was always ready to support her new ideas. Gradually, Emily realized that her life had not only improved, it had become something beyond what she had ever dreamed. She had a job she loved, she was healthy and beautiful, and by her side was a man who loved her unconditionally, supported her in everything, and inspired her to reach new heights. Looking at her reflection in the mirror, Emily no longer saw the traces of past suffering. She saw a strong, confident woman, ready for new challenges and adventures. And she knew that whatever the future held, James would be by her side, holding her hand and supporting her every step of the way. About 2 years had passed since Emily and James's relationship began. During that time, Emily not only fully recovered her health but also reached new heights in her career. Her innovative marketing strategies brought several major contracts to the company, and she became a recognized expert in her field. One evening, James came home with a mysterious smile on his face. "I have a surprise for you," he said, kissing Emily. "In 2 weeks, there's a big business forum, and I want you to be one of the keynote speakers." Emily was stunned. "James, this is an incredible opportunity. But are you sure I'm ready?" James gently took her hands. "Emily, you're more than ready. Your ideas are revolutionary. Your experience is unique. It's time to share it with the world." The next 2 weeks flew by in a whirlwind of preparation. Emily worked on her presentation day and night, polishing every word, every slide. James was by her side, supporting her and offering advice. Finally, the day of the forum arrived. Emily stood in front of the mirror, smoothing out the wrinkles on her elegant black dress, which perfectly accentuated her slim figure. Her hair was styled in an exquisite updo, and her makeup highlighted her natural beauty. "You look stunning," James said, appearing in the bedroom doorway in a flawless tuxedo. Emily smiled, feeling a mix of excitement and anticipation. "Thank you, love. So, are you ready to conquer the business world?" They arrived at the forum, held in a luxurious hotel. The hall was filled with influential businesspeople, well-known entrepreneurs, and journalists. Emily felt the admiring glances on her, but she focused on her upcoming presentation. When it was her turn, Emily took the stage, radiating confidence and charisma. Her speech was brilliant. She spoke about new trends in marketing, the importance of corporate environmental responsibility, and how overcoming personal challenges can be the key to professional growth. The audience was captivated. Emily answered questions with ease and wit, her smile lighting up the room. After her speech, a line of people eager to speak with her personally formed. Among the forum guests was Michael, Emily's ex-husband. He stood in a group of businessmen, next to an attractive blonde who appeared to be his date. Michael hadn't recognized Emily during her speech. She had changed so much that he couldn't have imagined that this brilliant, confident woman on stage was his ex-wife. Intrigued by the presentation, Michael decided to approach Emily to personally express his admiration. He made his way through the crowd and approached Emily just as she finished a conversation with one of the guests. "Excuse me," Michael began with his most charming smile. "I was simply blown away by your presentation. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Michael Parker, the CFO." But before he could finish, James appeared next to Emily. He gently wrapped his arm around her waist and proudly said, "I see you've already met the star of the evening. Allow me to introduce Emily Green, a brilliant marketer and, more importantly, my beloved life partner." Michael froze in place, his eyes widening in shock. He glanced back and forth between Emily and James, unable to believe his eyes and ears. "Emily," he finally stammered, "is it really you?" Emily calmly met his gaze. There was no anger or resentment in her eyes, just the calm confidence of a woman who knew her worth. "Hello, Michael," she said with a slight smile. "Yes, it's me. Nice to see you're doing well." "Pleasure to meet you, Michael," James said with a polite smile. Michael mechanically shook his outstretched hand, still unable to take his eyes off Emily. She looked stunning, slim, confident, radiating an inner glow. He couldn't believe this was the same woman he had once left. I didn't know you," Michael began, but Emily gently interrupted him. "A lot has changed, Michael," she said. "Life goes on, and sometimes it brings the most unexpected surprises." At that moment, the blonde who had been with Michael earlier approached them. "Darling, where did you disappear to?" she asked, taking Michael by the arm. "Oh, excuse me," Michael stammered. "This is Ashley, my girlfriend." He turned to Ashley. "Ashley, this is Emily, my ex-wife. And James, her partner." Ashley looked surprised and slightly embarrassed. She gave Emily an appraising look, and it was clear the comparison wasn't in her favor. "Nice to meet you," Emily said with a genuine smile. Then she turned to James. "Darling, we should go. We have a meeting with the investors from Japan." James nodded, unable to hide his admiring gaze. "Of course, love. Michael, Ashley, enjoy the rest of your evening." Emily and James walked away, leaving Michael in a state of shock and slight numbness. He watched them go, observing how James gently supported Emily by the waist, how they exchanged loving glances. "Michael, are you okay?" Ashley's voice snapped him out of his daze. Yes, I'm fine," he mumbled, but his thoughts were far away. He thought about the mistake he had made by walking away from Emily. How blindly he had judged her by her appearance, not seeing her inner strength and beauty. And how life sometimes teaches the most unexpected lessons. As for Emily, walking alongside James, she felt an incredible sense of peace and confidence. This encounter with her past only confirmed how far she had come, how much her life had changed for the better. She pressed closer to James, feeling immense gratitude for his love and support. "You were magnificent," James whispered, kissing her temple. "Not just on stage, but right now. I'm so proud of you." Emily smiled, her heart overflowing with love. She knew that her real life was just beginning, and she was ready for all the wonders that awaited her ahead. After the unexpected encounter at the business forum, Michael couldn't get Emily out of his head. The image of his ex-wife, now so successful and beautiful, haunted him day and night. He began to realize the extent of his mistake years ago when he had left Emily during a difficult time for her. For several days, Michael wrestled with himself, trying to convince himself that the past should stay in the past. But the more he thought about Emily, the stronger his desire became to make things right. In the end, he decided to act. The first thing Michael did was try to contact Emily through social media. He sent her a message apologizing for his past behavior and asking for a meeting to discuss everything. Emily, however, politely but firmly declined his offer. "Michael, I appreciate your apology," she wrote in response, "but I think it's best if we leave the past in the past. I am happy in my current life and don't see the need for this meeting." But Michael wasn't ready to give up so easily. He began showing up at places where he knew Emily might be, outside her office, at the cafe where she liked to have lunch. Once, he even accidentally ran into her at the supermarket. "Emily! What a surprise!" he exclaimed, pretending to be surprised. Emily tensed up when she saw him. "Hello, Michael." "Yes, quite unexpected." "Listen," Michael began, "I know you don't want to talk to me, but I have to tell you something important. I made a terrible mistake when I left you. I was foolish and shallow. Now I see what an amazing woman you are, and I—" "Michael, stop," Emily interrupted him. "I appreciate your words, but they change nothing. I have my life, and you have yours. Let's leave it at that." But Michael didn't want to listen. He continued appearing in Emily's life, sending her messages, flowers to her office, trying to talk at every chance encounter. Emily was increasingly uncomfortable but tried to remain calm and polite. James noticed Emily's growing unease and one evening, during dinner at home, asked her about it. "Emily, love, is something going on? You seem tense lately." Emily sighed. She didn't want to worry James, but she realized she couldn't hide the situation any longer. "It's Michael," she admitted. He's trying to get back into my life. Constantly writing, calling, accidentally meeting me. I told him I don't want to talk, but he doesn't listen." James frowned. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Emily, this is harassment. You shouldn't have to deal with this." "I know," Emily said. "I was hoping he would understand and stop. But I guess I was wrong." James took her hand. "We'll deal with this together, okay? You're not alone." Emily smiled gratefully, feeling the tension ease slightly. She knew that with James by her side, she could handle anything. The situation reached its peak a few days later. Emily was working late in the office, finishing up an important project. When she left the building, it was already dark. And there, standing by her car, was Michael. "Emily," he said, stepping toward her. "Finally, we can talk without interruptions." Emily felt her heart race with fear and irritation. "Michael, what are you doing here? I told you I don't want to talk." "But you have to listen to me," Michael insisted. "I know I made a mistake. I was a fool to let you go. But now I see how amazing you are. You've become even more beautiful, even more successful. I want to make things right, Emily. Give us another chance." Emily shook her head. "Michael, no. We have no future. I'm happy with James. Please, leave me alone." But Michael wouldn't listen. He grabbed Emily's arm. "You don't understand, Emily. We were meant for each other. I've changed. I've become better. I can give you everything you want." "Let go of me, Michael," Emily said firmly, trying to free her arm. "You're hurting me." "No, you have to listen to me," Michael insisted, tightening his grip on her arm even more. At that moment, a loud voice rang out, "Let her go immediately." It was James. He quickly approached them, his eyes blazing with anger. Michael released Emily's hand and turned to James. "This is none of your business," he snapped. "This is between me and my wife." "Ex-wife," James corrected him, positioning himself between Michael and Emily. "And it is very much my business when you're harassing and frightening the woman I love." Michael tried to move around James, but he stood firm. "Listen, buddy," Michael said. "You don't know our history. Emily and I—" "I know enough," James interrupted. "I know that you left Emily when she needed you the most. I know that you judged her by her appearance rather than her incredible heart and mind. And I know that you're not respecting her wishes and boundaries now." Emily, standing behind James, felt overwhelmed with love and gratitude for the man who was so resolutely defending her. Michael looked stunned. He shifted his gaze from James to Emily. "Is it true?" he asked. "Are you really happy with him?" Emily stepped out from behind James and took his hand. "Yes, Michael," she said firmly. "I love James. He supports me, believes in me, loves me for who I am. Please understand and accept this. Our time has passed." Michael looked at them for a long moment. Finally, his shoulders sagged as if all the air had gone out of him. I understand," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, Emily. I won't bother you any more." He turned and slowly walked away. Emily and James watched him until he disappeared into the darkness. When Michael was gone, James turned to Emily. "Are you okay?" he asked with concern. Emily nodded, feeling the adrenaline slowly leaving her body. "Yes, thank you. I don't know what I would have done without you." James gently embraced her. "I'll always be here to protect you," he said. "But you're very strong yourself, Emily. I admire how you handled the situation." They stood like that for a while, simply holding each other. Then James slightly pulled away and looked into Emily's eyes. "You know," he said with a light smile, "I had planned to do this a bit differently. I had a whole plan with a romantic dinner and a walk under the stars. But now, looking at you, I realize that the perfect moment is any moment when we're together." Emily looked at him with surprise and anticipation. "James, what are you talking about?" James took a deep breath and knelt down. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "Emily," he began, his voice full of emotion, "you are the most amazing woman I've ever met. You are strong, smart, kind, and incredibly beautiful, inside and out. Every day with you is an adventure, and I want to continue that adventure for the rest of my life. Will you marry me?" He opened the box, and in the light of the street lamps, a beautiful diamond ring sparkled. Emily felt tears welling up in her eyes. She looked at James, the man who loved her unconditionally, supported her in everything, and believed in her even when she didn't believe in herself. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, with a joyful smile. "Yes, James, I will marry you." James beamed. He slipped the ring onto Emily's finger, then stood up and spun her around in his arms. They laughed and cried simultaneously, unable to believe their happiness. When James finally set Emily down, she looked at the ring on her finger, then at the man she loved. "You know," she said with a smile, "you're right. This really is the perfect moment. Because it's real, just like our love." James kissed her tenderly. "I love you, Emily, and I promise to love you every day of our lives." "I love you too, James," Emily replied. "You're my hero, my support, my love." They stood there, in the dimly lit parking lot, embracing and looking into each other's eyes. This moment, so simple and yet so significant, marked the beginning of their new chapter. A chapter they would write together, hand in hand, heart to heart. Emily thought about her life's journey, its ups and downs, its struggles and victories. She remembered how she once felt lost and unloved. And now, looking into James's eyes, she knew she had found her home, her place in the world. The future stretched out before them, full of possibilities and promises. Emily knew that with James by her side, she could overcome any obstacle. Together they were stronger. Together they could do anything. Hand in hand, they walked to the car. Ahead of them lay a whole life full of love, respect, and happiness.